Thank you, Raymond.
Great. Paul, thank you. That's quite an introduction. No pressure. It's great to see you all, Bishop Patrick, everybody. It's great to be with you. Can I just check that my screen is what you're seeing?
Yes, we can see your Raymond Friel and all of that.
Great. Rather than looking at me for 20 minutes, you can look at some slides. So I think the first thing is to say welcome, as Paul indicated. Caritas Nottingham is one of the most recent Caritas agencies to join CSAN. CSAN is Caritas Social Action Network, which is a member charity of 54 charities in England and Wales are members of CSAN. And 17 of those charities now are Caritas diocesan charities. So 17 of the 22 dioceses in England and Wales now have a Caritas agency, which is great. So we've got a new structure of Caritas emerging in front of us just in recent years in the Diocese of England and Wales. So it's a hugely exciting development, and I think there's much more to come there. It's also part of a global network. Which is the Church's ministry of charity in the world. There are 165 Caritas, national Caritas agencies across the globe, so, which is good news. I mean, it's great news. You know, in times of hardship, and in times, even in the church, when we've had bad news and distractions and less than good news, we look at the global effort in the church's mission of charity, and it is indeed good news. People like yourself, every part of the world, working for charity. So I just want to say a few words about that, and just try and pull together some of the threads that we've heard this morning. It's been such a great morning. I've so much enjoyed being with you. And I'm just going to try, Paul's going to set me this brief, to try and pull together those threads so we can end up with this, an understanding of this integral ecology, as Bishop Patrick said, you know, right from the top this morning. What is integral ecology? I think that's a really important sort of concept for us. The charities themselves, I asked them a few weeks ago because I was talking to the bishops in their plenary this week, and I wanted to present to the bishops some sense of the signs of the times. You know, what were the charities saying were the concerns they had currently, and the reports I got back was nothing that will surprise you. You know, we're seeing a rise in emergency support, in grants and food and clothes and books and toys for children and families. We're seeing the phenomenon of the working poor, people who are in work but in poverty, who are subject to the cost of living increases despite any rises in living wages, who have got no defence against even minor shocks. It just takes a broken washing machine, a broken car, and they're spiraling into debt. There are fears for the new year with the rise in evictions and mortgage defaults and redundancies. We're hearing from everywhere about increases in social isolation and increasing fragility in mental health. These are big issues for everyone. The rise in relational poverty, marriage breakdown, which is a driver and a consequence of material poverty. So a lot of our charities, and I'm sure a lot of you as well, are having to think differently to respond to these challenges. So we're seeing employers providing more employer support. So the charities thinking about saving and loan schemes for their employees, thinking about the emotional well-being of their employees much more. Charities are more agile. You know, they're not stuck in one way of doing things. They're developing new services and new ways of being a charity in response to the challenges. About parishes wanting to be more outward facing into their community, into their wider community. I think that's a really important point. Caritas in dioceses are talking much more, and we've heard this word already, about advocacy and awareness of Catholic social teaching. And I think this is really important. I mean, I've sat in the pews as a Catholic for, you know, nearly 6 decades, God help us. And I haven't heard the word advocacy very much, but I'm hearing it a lot now. And it's a really interesting development in our faith and our faith in actions that we'll come back to. We're seeing a focus on relationships. Paul mentioned that, just knowing the people you've sat beside in church for 20 years. I mean, who are they? Who sits a couple of rows back from you? And we're seeing the development of listening centres and social friendship, which is really important. And a creative engagement with diocesan assets. If you look at the Catholic Church in England and Wales, the land it owns, the property it owns, and how is that used? I mean, if you look at any one week, what happens to parish halls, to churches themselves, to properties in the course of a week? Is a parish kitchen sitting empty all week? Or can a parish kitchen be part of an infrastructure of helping to feed the hungry in the community? I mean, these are the kind of questions now which I think we're beginning to ask ourselves. So our title was COVID, Climate and the Missionary Parish. And we think back to March 2020, when suddenly the world stopped. And the kind of mad rush that we were engaged in towards ever increasing growth and GDPR and economic success and pleasure, it just stopped. It was like an emergency break. And some people spoke into that moment more powerfully than others. We've said already that inequality which was there was exposed. And that moment in March 2020, when this solitary figure in a white soutane walked across a deserted St. Peter's Square in the rain and talked to the world and talked to the moment of real fear in people's hearts. And he said, like the disciples in the gospel, we were caught off guard by an unexpected turbulent storm. We have realized that we are on the same boat, all of us fragile and disoriented, but at the same time important and needed. All of us called to row together, each of us in need of comforting the other. Now, some people push back and say, well, hang on, the boat image isn't quite, in terms of equality. Well, yeah, yes, that's true, but the Pope is making another point, that we're all in the same boat in as much as we're all part of the same human family. It's that interconnectedness. And in that one paragraph, because Pope Francis is such a skilled communicator, we have so much of Catholic social teaching just captured there in a nutshell, that we are important and needed. The foundation of Catholic social teaching is the dignity of the human person. All of us called to row together, each of us in need of comforting the other, solidarity, that we reach out to our neighbor. We are interconnected. We are all in this together. And of course, we saw in lockdown so much of what it means to be a human being. We remembered so much of what it means to be truly human in lockdown. And I've had this discussion with a number of groups now, and it's a good question to ask. If you've got a group, ask them the question, what did we remember about being truly human in lockdown? And some of the things that have come up in discussions I've had include gratitude, the social liturgy of a Thursday evening, banging our saucepans in gratitude at the key workers. Sacrifice, a word we hadn't heard, perhaps even since the war, the self-offering of people, giving up their lives, their time for others, without asking for anything in return. The workers became visible to us again, the ordinary workers who keep things going and who couldn't work from home, who had to keep going out to jobs, to warehouses and factories and shops and schools and hospitals. They became visible to us again. Courtesy, we suddenly were all nice to each other. Did your emails change in the course of lockdown? Were suddenly people asking you, I hope this finds you well? It was great. All those gruff emails you used to get, not even a hi or a dear. Suddenly it was like, dear Raymond, I hope this finds you well. We remember courtesy. It was great. And that's kind of continued to some extent. Community. We talked about community and the common good. We talked about charity and giving and volunteering. We talked about the vulnerable. We talked about mortality, which is something our society is not good at talking about. Memento mori. The Catholic Church has always been comfortable with death because we don't see it as some terrible end, but a transition. We talked about simplicity, very much part of our theme today, of doing with less. You know, as Lord Debon said, you know, just eating less entertainment, less play. You know, we couldn't go out for our meals, we couldn't go to our theatres, just living a bit more simply. We thought, well, this is probably more like it. We did prayer. We discovered prayer. A lot of people looking for prayer, looking for spirituality. I think we discovered the importance of presence. And I think we discovered the importance of real presence. And yesterday, the bishops of England and Wales produced, I think, an inspiring statement about honouring Sunday. And in that Sunday, in that Eucharist, in that Mass, which we treasure so much as Catholics, we experience the real presence of the Lord in a very intimate way. We remembered our relationship with creation. We looked up at our empty skies and we looked into clean rivers. And all of this, suddenly all this language, we thought, well, this is our language. This is the way we talk. This is the language of our faith. And it's not that far away from people's concern. So we do have, I think, we do have a way to talk to people and wider communities. And I think we thought that had fractured. I think we thought there was the church and religion going this way and secular society going that way. I think that's changed. And I think we've discovered that actually what we've got to talk about in common is being human. What does it mean to be human? And the church has always talked about that. Again, I think as Lord Debon said, you know, let's start with the incarnation. You know, let's not start with the transcendent or the next life. Let's talk about this life and building the kingdom here and the incarnation and Jesus coming, you know, to this earth. So we have our language of common humanity, and the Pope reminded us of our why, our importance, the core of our mission. And just one or two thoughts, because I know a lot of you are involved in social action groups, and I found these questions from a book I'm reading recently on Christian leadership in a Christian perspective, because love is not enough. Love needs to be organized, as Pope Benedict said so memorably, and love demands justice. So we always need to think of those together. So we need to keep asking ourselves the questions. And if you are a new Caritas organization, if you're a new parish organization, why do we exist? You know, go back to the why. And I think the church actually should go back to the why more often than it does. I mean, we call it the charisma, which is the core of our faith. How do we behave? You know, what behaviors then in this parish, in this church organization that should characterize our work? What do we do? This is the what that arises from the why. How will we succeed? Have we got any notion of what fruitfulness looks like? What is most important right now? You know, can we direct our energies and our capacities to the current need in the current moment? And who must do what? The gifts we have in our teams, in our parishes, how can they be deployed? So there's a link to the book that came from, and it might be helpful for you as you're creating new social action structures, perhaps to give a little bit of reflection to how it can be organized. So let's just look again, because I really think we need to keep coming back to this, which is our why. I think our why as Christians, as Catholics, is in the gospel. And there's that wonderful moment in Luke's Gospel, chapter 4, which is sometimes called the Nazareth Manifesto, which is the most comprehensive treatment in the Gospels of the beginning of the ministry of Jesus. He goes back to his hometown of Nazareth. His ministry has started in Capernaum. He goes back to his hometown and he's asked to read in the synagogue. He's handed the scroll, and with deliberation, he finds the chapter in Isaiah where it says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to do 5 things: to bring good news to the poor, proclaim release to the captives, recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." And those who look at the kind of rhetorical patterns which you find throughout Scripture identify, 1 and 5, 2 and 4 are similar. That's about proclamation and justice advocacy. And the one in the middle is the core, is the heart of the good news, which is recovery of sight to the blind. And one commentator I read says that's compassion. And the heart of the good news is compassion. But compassion is always accompanied by justice free. This is right back into the Old Testament and the year of the Lord's favor, the Jubilee year, when debts were cancelled, when prisoners were set free, and land was restored to original owners, and proclamation, good news to the poor. Always those in combination. Now, I put this slide in. I wasn't intending to share this, but I was so struck by some of the earlier comments around original sin and Adam and Eve, and I thought, well, this might help actually, because I think here this is one of the best definitions of sin I've ever read from Pope Francis. Because if we're talking about liberation, well, liberation from what is the question? Liberation from what? And I think in my Catholic life, it's often been the focus on liberation. Yes, liberation from the church, actually, especially the church's social doctrine, teaches us liberation from sin and everything that oppresses the human person. Everything that oppresses the human person. That's Paul VI. That runs right through since then social doctrine. So this definition of sin or liberation, this is what we're liberated from. I think we can see the coming together of some of our themes. So Pope Francis says, our sin lies in failing to recognize value, in wanting to possess and exploit that which we do not value as gift. Sin always has this same root of possessiveness, of enrichment at the expense of other people and creation itself. There's a link. There's a link. It's the sin is trying to extract value for ourselves, for our enrichment, from that which value should not be extracted from. And it's other people as we exploit them, or it's creation itself for ourselves. That's the original sin. And that's what we're seeking liberation from. The sin is in exploiting that which must not be exploited, in health, power, or satisfaction from where it should not be taken. Sin is a rejection of the limits that love requires. And that was the problem in the garden, that we had this great offer and we disobeyed and we breached those limits, and we've been breaching those limits since. That's the root of it. And we can see that in our extraction of wealth from the earth itself. There's this great work I've come across called The Planet, especially since 1950. This is the post-war kind of boom. And you might be able to see, I'll send you these slides to Paul, by the way, so that they can be shared. There's a little kind of line down each of the slides, and that line is 1950. And everything takes off around about 1950. So the GDP, the energy use, urban population, paper production, water use, transportation, international tourism, everything just sort of explodes. Now, we thought this was great. We thought this was absolutely fantastic. We loved this and we bought into this. It's captured brilliantly in that that series, Maddening. Don Draper, happiness is the smell of a new car. We love this because we were all consumers. We could all buy happiness, and we would say it came at a cost to our happiness in the direction of possessions is quite the reverse. So this is where we can begin to see that living simply, living a gospel life, is not buying into this fantasy of increasing wealth and extracting value from the earth. We tell a different story. We sing a different song. And Pope Francis again puts it so succinctly for us. The world tells us to seek power and money. God tells us to seek humility, service, and love. This is our good news. It's a different way to be human, a different vision of belonging together on this earth. It's a vision of right relationships. I think this is one of the key things that we can talk. And this is when I think it comes together. So shalom, life in its fullness, salvation, health. Our vision for that is multi-dimensional. It's different relationships. And I was really struck earlier when Charles said a lot of the climate movement, I think he said it was counting carbon, and it wasn't always talking about justice. That's spot on. And it's very biblical in the sense that human fullness is always these relationships all working together. It's like a circuit. Our relationship with God, we acknowledge God as our creator in faith. We acknowledge that we are creatures dependent on God for our flourishing. We acknowledge that a life with our neighbor, we are called to look after the neighbor, especially the vulnerable neighbor. And our relationship with creation is an expression of that as well. So if we just develop a relationship with creation, which some of the climate movement tends to do sometimes, and we forget our neighbor and the poor and those who are impacted by climate change, then we have a distorted set of relationships. So it's that circuit, that biblical circuit. And Pope Francis refers to this in Laudato Si. This is quite a long extract, but I think it's an important one. And he goes back to St. Francis. And he says, I believe that St. Francis is the example par excellence of care for the vulnerable and of, there we go, integral ecology, lived out joyfully and authentically. He is the patron saint of all who study and work in the area of ecology. And he is also much loved by non-Christians. He was particularly concerned for God's creation and for the poor and outcast. He loved and was deeply loved for his joy, his generous self-giving, his open-heartedness. He was a mystic and a pilgrim who lived in simplicity and in wonderful harmony with God, with others, with nature, and with himself. There's the circuit. With God, with others, with nature, and with himself. He shows us just how inseparable the bond is between concern for nature, justice for the poor, commitment to society, and interior peace. This is right relations in the mind of God. That is the Christian vision for integral development. So just a couple of quick final points, really, and this is important for us and important for Caritas, really, to remember this all the time, is that the charity, as it says here, this is the compendium of the social doctrine of the Church, and I urge you, if you haven't read, it's a bit of a doorstopper, but if you haven't read it, I would urge you please to invest in a copy and just read the first 100 pages. It's just inspiring. The compendium of the social doctrine of the Church. And it says, undoubtedly it's an act of love, the works of mercy by which one's neighbour responds here and now to a real and impelling need of one's neighbour. This is the Good Samaritan. This is binding wounds. This is feeding the hungry. This is responding to suffering. This is absolutely key to being a Christian. Is that enough? No, This is really important. It's not enough. Equally, indispensable act of love is to strive to organize and structure society so that one's neighbor will not find himself or herself in poverty. That's the bit about justice and advocacy. It's not just about charity. It's about changing the structures of injustice really, really strongly. So for a parish, and here the compendium talks about church communities, including the parish, brought together by the message of Jesus Christ and gathered in the Holy Spirit around the risen Lord, offer themselves as places of communion, witness, and mission. Very similar language to synod. Communion, witness, and mission. And as catalysts for the redemption and transformation of social relationships. So there's the mission for your parish, the transformation of social relationships. So where there is injustice, where there are not right relationships in your community, the parish is a catalyst for transformation of those social relationships, whether it's someone in isolation, the poverty of isolation, no one's spoken to them all week, or material poverty, or abusive relationship, or unjust working arrangements, wherever those relationships are broken and distorted, the parish has a role to work for their transformation. And I think key to that process is discernment. And I think this is important for any parish group, any Caritas group in a parish, a diocesan level, regional level, national level, is discernment. And I would encourage you to go back to this process, which was kind of forgotten in the church. This see, judge, act methodology, sometimes called the Pastoral Cycle. But St. Pope John the 23rd enshrined this in magisterial teaching, 1961 encyclical Mater et Magistra. He said, this is the way. This is the way you should approach social action. This is the way you should think about how you make concrete your faith and your love for God. So what do you see? What do you see around you? How well do you know your community? You gather in the data, yes, the social demographic, where's the poverty, where's the unemployment. You gather in the data, but you also gather the stories. You listen to people. You talk to people on the corner shop. You talk to the police. You talk to the social workers. You talk to the nurses. You talk to the people, as Pope Francis says, on the margins. And this is difficult. And we haven't really spoken this way until Pope Francis, who I believe is a prophetic voice in the church, says you can't see anything clearly unless you go to the peripheries. So are we prepared to go to the peripheries, to the estates, to the ones who are poor, isolated, who are trafficked, who work in car washes and who sleep 5 in a room? Are we prepared to find them, reach them, see their reality, hear their reality? And once we get the understanding of the reality in our community, judge, that's maybe not the best words, it was the original word, but judge as in discern. Prayerfully discerning what the Gospels are telling us about what we see. Is there a gospel or a scriptural moment rising in us? Is the Holy Spirit tugging our hearts, prompting us in a certain direction? Taking time to discern and then act. Okay, what can we do with the resources we have to address this situation and restore right relations? And I'll just finish with this because it does tie in, I think, and I'm really excited the church has embarked upon. And you can see here actually a lot of these themes tying together in the synod process. This is from the preparatory document, which says the purpose of the synod is to plant dreams, draw forth prophecies and visions, prophecies, the prophetic voice of what our society should look like if it was more conformed to God's will. Allow hope to flourish, inspire trust, bind up wounds, as we said, bind up wounds, weave together relationships, restore relationships, awaken a dawn of hope, learn from one another, and create a bright resourcefulness. Love that phrase. Create a bright resourcefulness that will enlighten minds, warm hearts, and give strength to our hands as missionary disciples in our parishes, in our dioceses. I think I'll stop there. I have no idea of the time, Paul, if I whittled on too long or not. But
Not at all.
Shall I stop there?
If that's all you have to say, but there's, if you want to round off still, you're welcome to.
No, I'll leave it there. I mean, I've just tried to offer some reflections and key themes, and hopefully just a chance for breakout or discussion. So let me stop there, Paul.
Okay, well, I'll take your screen down there. I can do that. There we go. Yeah, thank you, Raymond. But there was so much in there for us to chew on, and we have got 15 minutes, I think, to go into breakout rooms to go a bit further on that. And again, everybody, please come back with questions, suggestions, things to pick over as we reflect on what Raymond suggested. I think what you talked about, Raymond, really is summed up for me in that word that is, I just associate so much now with Pope Francis, accompaniment. He's the word accompaniment just seems to be everywhere in his writing, but particularly in Fratelli Tutti. He talks about social friendship, which is a kind of intentional form of accompaniment, and that being the place of discernment. You know, it was so good that you invited us into accompaniment, but not just to sort of, not for its own sake, but actually to see, well, what's actually going on here, and what do we need to call out? What do we need to be agents of change for? And I hope that the synod process will be beginning to school us, if you like, in that kind of responsible living. There was a phrase from Lord Stephen, wasn't there? You know, we how did he put it? We're responsible because we know. So we need to be people who know, who on whom nothing is lost. And thank you for your invitation there to be those people on whom nothing is lost. So I don't know if you had any sort of particular questions, Raymond, but to send people off with, but I've got a good one. I think if that's okay for you, I'll just post it into the chat here.
No, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, what have you heard from Raymond that you feel called to act on? Let's put that cycle into action. You might not have seen, you might have heard actually. But what have you heard? What has Raymond adverted us to that you feel called to judge or to choose? I see. Thank you, Anne. That's Catholics vocabulary there. That you feel called to make a choice about as a parish, as an individual, as wherever you can find collective common purpose. And that's exactly what Caritas is here for. It's a meeting place for finding common purpose here in the diocese. And as you do that, you might identify some questions that come back that you want to put back to Raymond. So let me just stick that in the chat. And that'll go with you. And what I've done is allocate people to groups of mostly, well, sometimes 3, usually 4, sometimes 5. Hopefully you'll be with somebody who's either close to you or who will you'll be interested to meet. Introduce yourselves. Take a good 15 minutes to chew it all over and make some notes that you can perhaps type into the chat when you come back for some questions or points that you want to put to Raymond, and Anne will steer us through that process. So here we go. Hopefully, if I click this button, you will all get an invitation to join. Hopefully, is that right? Everybody's got one?
Not yet, Paul.
Right. Try again. Now it says the breakout rooms are going to take 50 seconds to close. These are rooms that you're not in. So let's just let me just see what something on the it may be that I have to rearrange them just in a random you may have to come down to that because so any of my colleagues on the hosting team know why people didn't get a message. So we've got 5 seconds before the rooms are meant to close. But just a second. Right.
We've come out of the breakout rooms.
Yeah,
for some reason.
you've put the breakout rooms too short, Paul, I think.
Well, no, some people didn't go for some reason. So
we were thrown back.
We were thrown back.
Most of you did get into breakout rooms. That's all right. So
can I just say that you didn't give me time to click, but I still ended up in the room, but I've been brought back.
right,
Yeah.
okay, I'll try again. We'll start again, and I'll send other people up who were left behind one by one. Here we go. Right, so there were a few people. That's right. There were a few people who I didn't allocate. Now, David, I put you in one for West of Nottinghamshire. Don't know why that's not happened. Just bear with me. So, Bishop Patrick, do you mind? Do you want to go into a room? I can send you to any random one if you like.
Paul, I was just going to take a break for a few minutes.
That's fine.
Catch up on a few things, but I'll be back with you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Dinula, hello. I don't know why I missed you out.
Hi, Paul. Don't worry.
I
Don't feel forgotten. I was just interested to see all the technology.
There's a couple of. I can put you up with other people in the peak if you like. Where are they now? Or would you like to be in a different group? Oh, okay.
In a stronger way.
Movements, based in different parts of the world, Citizens UK. There's a lot of very good community development going on, and Pope Francis has encouraged us to get involved in that. That doesn't mean community organizing, which is Catholic only. Somebody asked me that the other day. That would be completely against the spirit of what we're talking about. And you can learn from the great sort of strategies of community organizing, and a lot of it is based on conversation, what we call encounter, what we call accompaniment. So, you know, think about moments of encounter, and think about, you know, using the space you have, use the parish hall, invite in our Muslim brothers and sisters, our Jewish brothers and sisters, you know, whatever, you know, other groups or people from the local community. Just invite them in and say, we just want to have a conversation, and look into some of the strategies that are used in community organizing. A lot of it is one-to-one conversation. You know, it's people having a one-to-one conversation for 30 minutes. And getting to know each other, you know, with no particular, you know, agenda, no particular outcome, but that culture of encounter. I mean, I love the image of people, you know, talking easily when they're walking together. That's very much the road to Emmaus, isn't it? Which is the sort of archetypal moment of encounter in the Gospels, when the two disciples who are despondent and who are walking away from a scene of disaster, who are walking in the wrong direction, are suddenly encountered by the risen Lord, and their eyes are open. They see, you know, they see clearly. They weren't seeing before. Their narrative was fragmented and broken, and they weren't putting it all together in the right way. And it was the Lord who helped them to see clearly. He interpreted for them the scriptures. Then they saw him at the breaking of the bread.
Yeah, I think perhaps one of, yeah, sorry,
And then they go back to Jerusalem.
I think perhaps one of the other issues is it's hard to communicate with other adults, but at the moment we haven't got the younger people, the teenagers in the churches very much. And how do we link with those young people who are working on social justice, but how can we link with our parishes? Any ideas on that then?
I'd find them where they are. And where are they from Monday to Friday? In our school, you know. I'd you know, make contact with the local mats, the local head teachers, and say, can we come and talk to, if the kids won't come to the church, well, can we go to the schools? Can we go to the kids?
yeah.
Can we go and talk to them, please? You know, I mean, and then that again, you've got synodality, you've got conversation, you've got, you know, can we talk to us? I mean, I think that'd be great. I'm sorry about the connection stuff, by the way. I know it's not been great.
That's all right.
And I don't know what's going on. I don't have the skills to fix it quickly, I'm afraid. But I get into the schools. You know, I was a head teacher for 14 years, and I had different contacts with different community groups who come in, including a choir, an elderly person's choir. And it was great. We did all sorts of stuff. It was amazing, the conversations and the work we did. Storytelling, the art group did portraits of it's great. Obviously, it was going when you get people together. So go to the schools, go and find the kids where they.
So we've got in Leicester's, one of the Leicester's group was discussing the way they can get people back to church to build welcoming communities. And some people are still scared to go out to church, and others want to get things back to where they were. So there's that difficulty with communicating with those people who might want to be involved but aren't in the church yet.
So, sorry, Anna, I'm not.
Sorry, are we breaking up?
I'm not picking that up, I'm afraid.
Right, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Any better? Yeah. So one group was saying, discussing the way they could get people back to church and build welcoming communities. And some people are still scared to go out to church, and others want to get things back to where they were before. So it's quite difficult, isn't it, at the moment, with those who perhaps would like to, but are frightened still.
Oh, I completely. And I was really struck. I mean, the bishops get that. The bishop's statement that came out yesterday on Honouring Sunday was, I thought, we're very sensitive to that.
Yes.
It wasn't get back to church, but, you know, big stick obligate. I was really struck by the language of it. It was very invitational and very understanding of people's fragility and fear, which I was struck by. But you know, we do talk about getting back to church, and rightly so. But then Pope Francis he's always church to people as well. You know, the church is not the only place where we encounter the Lord. You know, we encounter the Lord in each other, in the poor, in an upper room. You know, the Gospels are remarkably undramatic at times, and those encounters on a road, in a room, by a well. You know, these are the places of encounter. So take the church to the people.
Okay, I think I can't see any more questions. I can see one comment. Citizens UK have a lot of experience in social action and community organising, starting exactly with one-to-one conversations, as you said, Raymond.
Yeah. I mean, we can learn from these groups. So they've got a lot of experience. We just mustn't confuse them with the church because they're not the church. But you know, there's a lot of good people and good experience, and you know, London, you know, they've got, you know, they're instrumental in getting a living wage, and you know, some great campaigns of social justice, but they're not the church. And I think that the church's resource, you know, can be brought to this type of work. But we start with prayer and discernment, and then we can use some of the same strategies, so we can learn from these people and their years of experience in community organising, without a doubt.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, thank you, Anne. And I think the processes are very strong in community organising. I think there's a lot that we can learn from that. I've learned from parishioners at St Barnabas, for instance, about how important citizens has been to the parish there, and also in West Bridgeford, to enable that kind of listening that is so important now. You know, we've had 2.5 years kind of apart from each other, and if we're going to move forward in any sort of way together, we really have to start with listening. And I think this is the point that Maggie made about working with young people. We have to listen to them. We have to open our ears a lot more, don't we? In the next, particularly this stage that we're in now. Raymond, thank you very much for joining us. And I know we have plenty of other things to do and on our plate, and I know you do, Raymond. It's really good of you to make the time that you have to be with us today. There's a lot that people have appreciated. I've dropped in and out of groups, and they've all been sort of feeding off what you offered in your talk this morning. So we really appreciate you coming, and perhaps a little sort of virtual round of applause would be welcome. Thank you very much.
It's been a great pleasure. It's been lovely to be with you.
Yeah, and it's
a few familiar faces. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. And it's so good to be working with you. I can say personally, from to be working with you and be connected through you to not only CSAM nationally, but the whole international network of Caritas. Let me just share a few slides, because I'm not going to keep you from your lunch, but I do want to round off with an invitation to the Pioneer Parishes scheme, which is where we started, really. But first, just a little bit of context. I mentioned the workshops that we've had. Out of those, we're developing county hubs for Caritas. They're going to be the means of connection, the means of travelling together that we're going to have across the diocese, to make this a more human scale enterprise where people can actually meet and talk and get to know each other, perhaps more than at a diocesan-wide Zoom meeting or an in-person one that not everybody can get to. And the aims of those hubs is all about connection, contact, helping people and parishes grow as centres of outreach, holding the vision and the story. What is it, where have we come from and where are we going? What's the thing that we're working on right now? Following, I think, I made a note of all those 6 questions. Why do we exist? How are we behaving? What do we do? What would success look like? Questions like that, which really are so important in keeping the narrative going of our common effort. So the hubs are there really to to be the place of encounter and catalysts for what we do together. One of the areas that we focus on in Caritas is the environment, and there's a little extract from our prospectus that was launched last year. So this Pentecost, in fact, environment and global responsibility is right at the heart of it. And I've sent you, hopefully you'll have had this in an email over the last couple of days, a copy of this invitation to the journey that we're going to take together over the next 10 years in integral ecology, a journey of ecological conversion, as successive popes have called it. And conversion is hard work, isn't it? It's a challenge to us. It speaks directly to us and asks us to become bigger, better, different than we are now. So let me invite you to dip your toe into what we would like to promote more widely in the coming year as the scheme for what we call Pioneer Parishes. A Pioneer Parish, what is it? It's one where disciples are formed in caring for God's creation, in the reason, the why for the what that we've been talking about in the first half of today, and in fact, in all of it. So we learn, for instance, from Scripture, from Laudato Si, from our own experience of the natural world and how that forms us as people who need to rediscover our sense of home here, our belonging. Will be parishes that are on the road to reducing carbon emissions to net zero. This is something we have to do legally by 2050. It's a statutory requirement. Our hope is that we can do it a lot sooner than that, but exactly how soon remains to be seen. We've got a lot of work to do here to do it, and as Lord Deben pointed out, actually it's in the parishes that reducing carbon emissions from the diocese is really going to take is really going to happen most of all, because that's where the church is. Thirdly, making space for nature. You might just have a church car park. You may not have any other land other than the one that you sit on the pew on in Mass. But even there are things you can do to make space for nature, and I know there are people here who've done exactly that in their own church grounds. What was the journey look like? Well, it's a fairly logical process, really, and I think it's one that as we begin to become more confident to reach across to each other in our parishes, we will find the opportunity to do. So it's about pulling together just a few people who might be interested in this, talking to the parish priest, and perhaps speaking at the end of a Mass or something about, how can we respond to the invitation that's being offered through the Pioneer Parishes programme, to Laudato Si, to this year of this critical year leading up to COP27, when Britain is really going to be in the driving seat of safeguarding the climate for future generations. So identifying the key people involved and inviting everybody that has an impact in the way the parish works to assess, well, what are we doing already that we can celebrate? How are we already safeguarding and caring for creation in what we do? And what more could we do? And from that, to develop an action plan. And right from the outset, in fact, think about registering for a Live Simply award, because this is exactly, Live Simply is exactly there to recognise and celebrate what the things that you'll be doing. So those three themes again: formation, decarbonisation, making space for nature. But there are other things as well, and as you'll have seen in the Living Laudato Si invitation, there are other areas of impact that we can look at, but don't feel under any pressure. Just take the journey as it comes. but there may be opportunities that come up to look at how you use resources and where the waste goes, particularly how you might buy stuff, what the ethics are behind that. Is it slavery free, for instance? Is it sustainably sourced? How you measure up across different activities, how you build resilience in the community to things like flooding. You know, can your facilities be made available in the event of a natural disaster, for instance, as we very nearly had up in the Peaks, didn't we, a couple of years ago? And what can you do for advocacy to, again, this is a very timely thing for this year of the UK presidency of the COP process. And we've already had a clear idea of engaging MPs more like local level in that journey. And those key people, here are a few. I think this is the sort of map of a typical parish. Who are the people that we can start talking to engage on this? And where there are young people, they have the biggest stake, and I think it's important to enable them to feel that they're part of this, and in fact that they are the leaders in it, in a sense, and we're there to, the rest of us who are of more mature years are there to support the effort that we all have to take together. There's a resource on the website of a spreadsheet where you can sort of keep track of your Pioneer Parishes progress. And to make that progress, we're working with an organisation called the Journey to 2030, which you may have come across, which is supporting work in a lot of dioceses now across England and Wales, with a fantastic website, which we'll pull together in the pack of resources, which will come out to you in the next few weeks and months. So you won't be left alone, and you'll be connected with each other if you want to, because you're invited to sign up as a Laudato Si champion in your parish as well. And I'll send out with a sort of postscript to this event the opportunity to join that. And if you want to join a WhatsApp group for that, that's already happening. There's usually a message every one every day on average. I think it's lively, but not too lively, which is just how I like WhatsApp. There are plenty of other resources besides Journey to 2030, and charities around that can support us, and varying sort of styles of engagement. For some, everybody needs a different way of, and it is called to a different kind of witness on this. So it's important all of those are available to us to help us find our own authentic way of speaking, way of being in this journey, and our own part to play. The international Laudato Si platform is now open to people to register. You can register. So if you're interested in this, do sign up on the Vatican's Laudato Si action platform. And that'll be something that will grow, and we'll be making sure that we make the best possible use of that. To look at this a bit further, we've got a follow-up meeting organised on the 7th of December at 7 o'clock, when we can just explore a little bit more about what would work for you, right? If we've got time now, I'd be open to any comments and suggestions about how the Pioneer Parishes scheme can work most effectively for you and your parish. But do come on the 7th of December when we can get into a lot more hands-on about this. And speaking of hands-on, just to remind you that this is about getting our hands dirty and getting to work. If there are any questions, there's just possibly 1 minute for me to answer them. But do come on the 7th of November, 7th of December, and find out more. I will, thank you, Juliana. I'll send an email out with an invitation and a booking form, and the invitation to join the Laudato Si Champions Network as well. So actually, it is nearly quarter past 1, and if if microphones were unmuted, I expect I'd hear a bit of rumbling by now. So can I say a warm thank you to everybody for coming. If he was here, I'd want to thank Lord Deben for making time in his busy schedule. To Charles, who's had to leave us because his own family responsibilities, but Rosie has been able to stick with us. Thank you, Rosie, and please do pass on our thanks for the inspiration, actually, that you both brought. And somebody in a conversation I dropped into talked about the sort of fresh air that brought to us. And I think we've got plenty to do with you, and I look forward to being in touch with you after this as well. If you're interested in taking part in that work, please do get in touch with me. The work with diaspora and ethnic minority communities, it doesn't matter what your ethnic background is, because this is something that does concern us all. It's something that all of us, whatever our background, need to take seriously. So please do get in touch if you'd like to be part of a steering group or something like that for the project. Finally, Raymond, thank you again for being such an inspiration for this second session. And it's we're so fortunate to have your accompaniment as Caritas Diocese of Nottingham for our journey as we develop and grow, as I hope and pray that we will. If Bishop Patrick's around, I'll invite him in a minute to say a blessing for us. If that's it may be this is not been able to. Ah, there we go. Yes. So I think all remains for me to say is thank you very much for joining us, and do stay in touch. Hopefully you're signed up to Grapevine. I will put a link to the chat in the chat to Grapevine, which is where you will find out all the next steps in our journey together. I hope it's been a good day for you, and shall we hand over to Bishop Patrick? Thank you very much, Bishop.
Just to echo those words, thanks to Paul and the team around Caritas Nottingham, and to the Justice and Peace Commission for organising what's been a very, very helpful and I think potentially very fruitful conference today. As I see it, and I think many of you do, what we've been talking about this morning is part and parcel of the synodal process. It's at the very heart of it, really. This listening to each other and listening to as wide a group of people as we possibly can as a church. So I want to, on behalf of us all, maybe end our time with the synodal prayer, but weaving in one of my favorite bits of the preparatory document that Raymond Friel alluded to. Holy Spirit, we stand before you in gratitude today. We have gathered together in your name, and we know that you have blessed us. With you alone to guide us as we go forward, make yourself at home in our hearts, in our communities. Teach us, direct us, shape the way we must go forward and how we are to do it. We know we are weak and sinful, but do not let us ever promote disorder. And do not let ignorance on our part lead us down wrong paths or influence our actions. But instead, through your guidance, Holy Spirit, may each of us together plant dreams, draw forth prophecies and visions, allow hope to flourish, inspire trust, bind up wounds, weave together relationships, awaken a dawn of hope, learn from one another, and create a bright resourcefulness that will enlighten minds, warm hearts, give strength to our hands. All of this we ask of you, who are at work in every place and time, in the communion of the Father and the Son, forever and ever.
Amen.
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 And may Almighty God bless you, bless all of us, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Enjoy a much needed lunch.
Thank you. Thank you, and you. Thank you very much, Bishop Patrick.